Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, this is episode 76. Today's guest is an artist from New Zealand who I connected with only recently. As soon as I looked at her website, I knew that I wanted to have her as a guest on the podcast. Hannah Shand creates detailed fine art pieces of native birds of New Zealand. Her work is visually stunning, but the reason I was particularly keen to chat with Hannah is because of the conservation message behind everything that she does. Hannah is committed to raising awareness and appreciation of New Zealand's bird life and has partnered with conservation organisations to use her artwork to help fundraise for their conservation efforts. Part of the process of creating Hannah's amazing pieces involves getting to know the birds, and this often means Hannah gets the chance to travel the country and visit remote predator-free islands and bird sanctuaries. We spoke about Hannah's experiences with New Zealand's unique and fascinating birds and how she translates these wildlife encounters onto the page. Let's listen. Thank you so much for being here with me. I look forward to going into your story and your artwork. Thanks for being here.
It's very exciting to be here. Thank you so much for asking me.
So I always love to hear about how it all began, and I'm wondering if you've always been connected with nature.
Yeah, definitely. Growing up, I was very fortunate to move around quite a bit when I was younger. So I was born in Australia, moved to New Zealand, and then when I was 7, I moved to America, lived there for a couple of years, moved back to Australia, lived there for 4 years, and then moved back to New Zealand. But while we were traveling, my mum especially is really, really into nature. So whenever we'd go to a new place, the go-to for us was like wildlife sanctuary, sometimes zoos, bushwalks, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, sort of getting to know the area. Like in America, we had this beautiful walking track with beavers and, to walk down and see how they'd gnawed away at the tree and, the dams that they'd build. Yeah, that was a really special sort of thing to see. Like in Australia, we went to a place called the Dandenongs. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
I haven't been there, but
yeah,
it's beautiful.
Yeah, so my mum has a really big passion for nature, and she also loves rescuing birds as well. So over the years, we've had a lot of baby birds that she has hand-reared and released.
Wow.
And ones that have come back year after year. So, each season they'll come back and, she's named them like gorgeous names like Fluffy and things like that. But, honestly, they come back and, yeah, it's just been really special. So, yeah, she has definitely, sort of shown me what it's, like to really care for nature and care for those lovely little birds that might, need rescuing or injured and things like that. Yeah.
Wow. I love that story because often it only takes one person in our lives to be a role model or to be a mentor of sorts to really instill a love of nature that we carry with us for the rest of our lives. And it sounds like your mum really was that for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think now more so as an adult, I can really appreciate what she did for me, because I think at the time, obviously I loved it, but I don't think I fully understood what she was doing until now that I'm older, because, you go through your teenage period and all the sorts of different things that you get into. And now that I'm an adult, I'm like, wow, I'm really glad that they took the time to take us to all those places and get to meet all those different types of animals. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And tell me about art. Has art been the same? Has art been with you since childhood?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So always been into art. Started out as a young kid drawing lots of different things like Disney characters and a lot
Yeah.
of animals as well,
Mm-hmm.
butterflies. And I sort of look back at some of my sketchbooks, and there's some birds that I drew about 20 years ago, and I've got like a photo up on my Instagram, comparing 10-year-old me drawing a parrot and now
Oh,
30
cool.
year old me drawing one as well. But yeah, always really been into art. I think what really draws me into it especially is focusing on the detail of everything kind of that I do. So I did a lot of art at high school, and then I got into sewing as well. So I actually pursued like a fashion degree. I did like a 4-year fashion degree in Wellington, and sort of worked in the fashion industry. But when I did that, with sort of presentation boards and things, everything was always done by hand. Like anything that I
Mm-hmm.
could do by hand, I was drawing and sketching. Yeah, so always.
Wow, so that's so great that it's been with you, because a lot of people, most children love making art, and then there's often a period when we stop, but it sounds like you never stopped and you brought it along with
Yeah,
you.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and sort of the way that I got into doing art full time is kind of interesting as well, because I finished my fashion degree and I started working in the fashion industry in one of my first jobs. So it's actually quite hard working in the fashion industry, I found out. But I started off working in like a retail store, and
Mm-hmm.
the journey to my work was an hour on the train each way. So the way I started getting my creative outlet was actually drawing birds on the train.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's, I had a wee look. And it was 8 years ago that I started doing that. So I sort of developed my style, yeah, on the train back then. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then there was a point where you said, hang on, this fashion thing's not for me, and pivoted to be a full-time artist. Was that a big leap, or did it feel very natural?
Oh, it, it definitely was a big leap. I worked in the fashion industry for about 4 years, and I felt like something was missing. Like there were parts that I enjoyed, but often when you work in the fashion industry, you're sort of part of a production line. So I did a lot of
Mm.
cutting out clothing and helping with the production, but the actual creativity, often you're not actually getting to do that unless you're,
Mhm.
the designer or the owner of the business. So yeah, I definitely felt like the creative side of me, and that's why I was drawing, on the train, on the weekends, after work, all that kind of stuff. Um, so it definitely was a big leap. In, I guess, the sort of final 2 years of working in the fashion industry, I was drawing a lot, especially like on weekends, and I took on a couple of commissions. And then in the final year before I decided to do art full time, quite a few big sort of significant things happened. I met my lovely partner, and
Mm.
he owned his own business at the time, and he saw, even on our first date, he saw the passion that I had for my
Mm.
drawing, and he was like, "Oh, are you telling people that people could buy this?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Maybe you should. Maybe you should just write that someone can buy this." So
Yes,
um, he really fostered, or he could see in me that I
the
could.
potential of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So over sort of the last year, I saved as much as I could. Didn't go on any holidays. I lived with my parents at the time,
Mhm.
which sort of meant that I could save. And we went through a quiet period, or a quiet season at the job that I was working, because fashion can be quite seasonal. And I just decided that I was going to give it my best shot. I had saved enough so that I could, pay to live for, I think, 4 or 5 months. And I just thought,
Mhm.
look,
Mhm.
I can survive this long. And even if I don't sell anything, I can get another job.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was 4.5 years ago. And
Oh,
I
fantastic.
think it was the best decision,
Mm-mm.
ever, because I never believed that I would be an artist. I never thought that. And I think that's why I sort of went into fashion, because I don't know, I just never thought that I could work for
Mm.
myself. It wasn't something I thought I could do. So having someone else believe in me was a huge factor into, stepping
Wow.
out on my own.
That is so cool. Congratulations on doing that, because it's a big deal and you
Yeah.
did it and now you're flying and it's so wonderful.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, like, not everyone, not that I had anyone discouraging me, but not
Mhm.
everyone believed that it would be possible,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I think the fact that I've made it work and really be thriving as well is really exciting. And being able to go on a bushwalk and say, well, this is a work trip,
This is work,
like this is work.
yes.
I'm
Yes.
doing this beautiful nature walk, and I'm
Yes.
working, I'm learning about the birds and, the nature around me. So,
Oh,
yeah.
amazing. And so your the main focus of your work is native birds of New Zealand. And I was
Yes.
really drawn to your work because of the connection you make between art and conservation.
Yeah.
And I clicked on your website, and the first thing that really drew me in was the video you created to show your process of creating the artwork, A Lost Harmony.
Oh, yes.
I wonder if you could talk about the story of the huia and the conservation message behind this painting you created.
Yeah, so that was definitely a really special artwork that I created. So I was commissioned to do that piece by a lovely couple up in Auckland. And so the huia, for those who haven't heard of the bird, is an extinct bird of New Zealand, and they were last seen in the early 1900s, about 1907, and they became extinct for a couple of reasons. So um, introduced predators. When we settled in New Zealand, we brought along with us lots of things that birds weren't accustomed to, like stoats and rabbits and possums and all sorts of things that our birds that often nest on the ground or feed on the ground weren't used to. And they were also, their beautiful tail feathers go from black, and then a couple of centimeters from the bottom they change to white, and they're very beautiful, and they were like a status symbol. So they were hunted for their tail feathers, and it
Okay.
became like a fashion accessory. So unfortunately they had a few things that
Against them.
so the predators, the also habitat loss as well. So New Zealand is very well known for farming. So a lot of the native bush got taken out for farming, and the trees to build houses and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, they sadly became extinct. But they're a really incredible looking bird. So they're a wattle bird, and they've got really unique beaks as well. So the female has a long curved beak, and then the male has a short straight beak. And I think they had like the biggest difference of beak shape between male and female. Like, I think they used to think they were actually different species, but it was the male and the female. And yeah, it's really lovely. Like the huia, they work together, the male and female, they pair for life, they bond for life. And the female will often, like the male, so they feed on like old sort of rotten trees and things on the ground often, along with other stuff, but the male will peck hard at like a piece of wood, and then the female will put her beak in and grab the bugs out. So that's how they would
They
feed
help.
together. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. And the message was that we have so much to lose, and
Exactly.
if we don't preserve it. And I love that you had that voiceover. It was an old a voiceover from the radio, and it was a presenter talking about the huia and a Maori man doing the call, reproducing the call.
Yeah, that was a really special recording because there's no actual recordings of the birds, and there's no photographs either. So all we have is taxidermy. Yeah, so it was quite an interesting process to create the artwork because there are no photos. So I used about 50 different images of taxidermy from like museum archives, along with photos I'd taken myself of like similar shaped birds. There's tui and kākā, which are kind of similar. So it was very interesting to create a realistic artwork of an extinct bird. And also the composition is sort of symbolic of the male and female sort of creating that harmonious shape.
Yes.
And with the name as well, sort of showing that they have harmony together, but also, exactly as you said, a lost harmony. Like with them being lost, we do have so much to lose with other birds. I think too as well, people, when I sort of talk about the huia, everyone's like, oh, I wish we could do something about it, or I wish they were still here. And I think what's important with that artwork is to talk about there's so many birds in New Zealand that are on the brink of extinction now, and we want to protect them while we're here, and not say, oh, what if we did this, or what if we did that, or sort of use it as a symbol to protect what we have.
Yeah. And I didn't realize, but I learned from you that New Zealand has one of the highest extinction rates in the world for plants and animals. And I guess it's because of this, about introduced predators. But there's this amazing system that has developed in New Zealand for maintaining predator-free islands and moving species to different islands. I spent some time in New Zealand when I was young. When I was a teenager, I put on my backpack, and that was the first place I went. And I spent time in Stewart Island, which is the island at the very bottom of New Zealand, for those who haven't seen it. And so there's a parrot there called the kakapo, and they were moving kakapo they had moved kakapo to an outer island that was predator free. And I'd love to know about your experience with this whole idea of moving animals to predator-free islands just to maintain the population.
Yeah, so it's really cool that you've asked that question, because one of the ways, or one of the things that really, really sparked my massive love for birds was Zealandia, which is the first mainland predator-free fenced sanctuary, which was... it's an amazing place. So it's in the middle of our capital city, in a valley with a reservoir, and they've built like a predator-proof fence around the whole sanctuary, and they've eradicated the predators, with trapping and maintaining like the boundary, making sure there's no trees close to it where predators can come in. And going to that place was amazing. I had never been to anywhere quite like that before, where the birds were just really thriving, and it was an amazing place to visit. So that was kind of the place that really grew my love for native birds. And since then I've been to lots of other amazing predator-free islands like Kapiti Island and Tiri-Tiri-Matingi Island, and they're definitely a really important place where they can monitor birds and help with the breeding programs and sort of build the birds up and then relocate them to different islands where they're safe from predators.
And you had the chance to participate in banding some kākā chicks. I'd love to hear about that.
So the kākā are a native New Zealand parrot, and they're a beautiful brown parrot with oranges and reds, and they're very smart, very intelligent, and so they introduced kākā to Zealandia, about 12 pairs, nearly 20 years ago, and since then they have like carefully monitored them, and they've got like nest boxes throughout the sanctuary to help encourage them with their breeding and to keep them safe. And one of my lovely friends, Judy Lapsley Miller, she's been amazing. She's introduced me to a lot of incredible things. She introduced me to photography a couple of years ago, so I've started taking my own photographs. And she's also a volunteer at Zealandia as well. So she started off helping with the sort of feeding stations. They've got some supplementary feeding stations, so she was helping with that. But slowly, she's like kākā crazy. Her and her husband Linton, they have been helping monitor the chicks for years, and sort of slowly started helping with recording the statistics and then doing the banding as well. So earlier this year, I was very, very lucky because I was in Wellington at the right time for the breeding season and when the chicks were at the right age to be banded. And yeah, they asked me if I'd like to come along. And of course,
Yeah, how can you say no?
Yeah, so it was an amazing day. We sort of went off the tracks to the different nest boxes, and I got to help them with the banding. So they've got it down to a T with the process and making sure that you hold them in the correct way to protect them and make sure they don't get hurt. And part of that process is like weighing them and sort of having a wee sort of check over, measuring like their beak, their wing, their tail, and then putting bands on them as well. So each chick will have like a different combination of bands so that it can be identified from a distance. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
And this program's been really successful because I read that now some of the kākā are actually flying over the fence into the nearby suburb. So in essence, releasing themselves.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so there's like a flow over effect because Zealandia has been so successful. They're safe inside the sanctuary and often nest and breed, but then they will venture out into the city. So like I was at near Parliament in the middle of Wellington, and I saw a kākā. So
that's incredible.
And other birds have really thrived from Zealandia as well, like the tui and other birds like the hihi stitch bird, and lots of other birds, riflemen, have been introduced. And it's just a really exciting thing to see in the middle of a city. They've done an incredible job and inspired a lot of other people to do the same. So that's one other really cool thing as well, is just how they've inspired and shown other people what protecting an area will do, because it's not just the area, but they'll flow over the fence. So it's really cool. It's a special place.
And sometimes there's one particular individual who becomes important. And I'd love for you to tell the story of Whisper, the mopok, the ruru.
Yeah, she was a beautiful bird. So when I, as part of my work, I travel around New Zealand, which is amazing, and trying to visit as many bird sanctuaries and bird watching hotspots as I can. Still many, many more to go to. But an amazing place is Wingspan Birds of Prey Trust in Rotorua, and they do lots of different things there. They do education, lots of people can come and see the birds. So advocacy and breeding programs. And a beautiful, beautiful bird there was a bird called Whisper, and she was a mopok. And when I was there a couple of years ago, I was very lucky, and I got to go meet her. And I got to take lots of photos and learn a bit about her. And she was just a really, really special bird. So she came to Wingspan as an egg, and a forestry worker had found the egg like abandoned, like on the ground. So they took it to Wingspan and they incubated the
Wow.
egg. And yeah, so she was a really special bird to everyone who worked there.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, so when I went there, took lots of photos, and I had her as the lock screen of my phone for about a year. I always have a lot of I've always had a lot of like commissions to do, so I knew I would keep her on my lock screen, and at some point I'll get to draw her. So yeah, I think it was in 2020 I started to work on her to draw like a close-up side profile of her. I really like seeing all the beautiful little delicate feathers around their face, which often front on you don't see. And I wanted to do some fundraising with the artwork. So yeah, I contacted Wingspan just as I was about to sort of finish the artwork, and I couldn't believe it. But the day that I contacted them was the morning that she had died.
Oh
I
dear.
know, yeah.
Yes. But she lived with them from an egg till she was
13.
13, is that right?
Yeah,
That's amazing, and sounds like I read one of the articles that linked from your website about how she was they would pop some eggs under her, so she incubated other
yes,
babies, and
yeah.
sounds like she was a very important part of the
Oh, she
whole
was.
place.
I think as well, when you get to see a bird that close up, it gives you, like, it makes you care about all all
Yes.
the other birds a lot more. I think it's hard sometimes, when you do see birds, it's always very fleeting, or you see
Mhm.
them from a distance, but when you get to see
Mhm.
something really close up, it sort of grows your passion for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love your idea to fundraise as a way of connecting art and conservation,
Mm.
and yeah, bringing the two together. And this, it sounds like your Whisper fundraiser went really well.
Yeah, so it did go really well. So I've sort of done fundraising in a couple of different ways. Sometimes I've like donated prints for giveaways, all sorts of different things. And it kind of started off where I could raise a couple of $100. And then with that one, I donated 30% of the sales for 2 weeks when I released the artwork. And yeah, with that one, I was
Great.
able to raise just under 2,000
That's
for that
amazing.
one. And yeah, I think my aim is to try and grow what I can do for
Mm.
conservation as my artwork improves and sort of grows. So yeah, last year I had a really great year and did a lot of conservation work. So I used my huia artwork in a couple of different ways with the New Zealand Nature Fund, which is another conservation group, and I was part of a charity auction event. And yeah, we with that artwork and another one as well, I auctioned one off on Trade Me. I raised just over 13,000 with that artwork.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah.
That's really big. Wow,
I couldn't
congratulations.
believe
That's
it. Yeah, I was obviously I was there, and I almost couldn't watch my stuff being auctioned off. It was really scary, but yeah, it's
That's
cool.
wonderful.
Thank you.
That you can work doing your creative passions, that your office can be the forest,
Yeah,
that you can raise money to help conservation efforts. So positive, so wonderful.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like now that I've found what I want to do, there's
Mm,
so many things that
mm.
I've dreamed up and goals that I want to achieve. And yeah, it's the best job ever.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to talk about your process because your pieces are incredibly detailed, and I know the listener will be really interested to know how you go about it. So it starts off with a photograph, and you said that you have been taking some of your own
Mhm.
photographs lately. Maybe you can walk us through the whole process from start to finish.
Yeah. So Well, in the last couple of years, I've done a lot of commissions. It's predominantly been commission work. And so often I'll have someone come to me and they'll ask for a particular bird.
Mm-hmm.
And the next step from that is researching where to find the bird. And, often these birds will be endangered and there'll only be small numbers of them in certain parts of the country. And often I'll take a road trip and take my camera and
Wow.
do my best to photograph them. And obviously with birds, they don't sit still for very long.
Yes.
And often I don't get the photo, or I don't
Mm-hmm.
get the best photo.
Mm-hmm.
Often I'll have to Photoshop different parts of the bird into one bird,
Yes.
into a
Okay.
pose that I want to use.
Mm-hmm.
But I spend quite a bit of time watching them and learning how they move and how they interact with each other. Quite a few of my artworks, I'll have like two birds as well, which I think is important because I love showing the connection between the different birds and the male and the female, or it doesn't matter what they are, but just showing a connection. And a lot of people who've bought my art have said, oh, I see myself in this artwork. And I think that's really important, because
Wow.
when you see yourself or somebody else, or my children, or I've got
Yes.
some pictures of little cuddly birds cuddled up, people are more inspired to care about them.
Yes.
And so after spending as much time as I can with them, and I do have to say that often it is really hard to see particular birds, so often I'll team up with a photographer who lives in the area and has beautiful photos. So so I do work with other photographers as well when I can't take the photos myself. But I do try and take them because I want to experience what it was like being there with them. And so from all the different photos that I'll take, the next step is Photoshop. Because as I said, it can be really hard with birds moving so quickly and not sitting still to get the perfect photo. So often I'll take multiple different photos, and with the research that I'll do, I'll learn about what type of trees, or plants that they like to eat, or what they'd naturally want to be perched on. And Photoshop all the different aspects of the image together.
Yes. Your originals are quite large and your strokes are quite tiny. I'm sure it takes a really long time to finish a piece.
Yes. So I draw in fine tip black pen, and my favorite pen is a 0.05, which is the tiniest pen that I've found. And I draw, like in a realistic style. So to be able to get all that detail in, I like to draw them as big as possible. Often my originals will be like about an A2 or an A1 size. To be able to enable me to draw all that detail in there. So I spend about like 1 to 3 months working on one piece at a time. So
And you start off with, I heard you say you start off with the eye, and that makes so much sense because the eye is the soul of the bird.
Exactly. Yeah. And if there's no life in the eye, then there's no point drawing the artwork. I'll start again. So I sort of start with the eyes and then the face, and then because I sort of spend such a long time on it, I'll sort of draw maybe what I feel like on the day, like different pieces that I find interesting.
And I'm amazed because you do almost like full detail in one area, and it's like putting the pieces of a puzzle together, because you'll have, instead of like layering it like you do with the watercolor painting, for example, it's like full detail and it expands out in full detail. It's quite astonishing to see a half finished piece of yours because it's so perfect, and then there's the blank page, that it sort of just grows out in full
Yeah.
detail is so fascinating.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, yeah, I take my time with my pieces. That's one sort of rule, is because I can't rub anything out, I have to
Yes.
really take my time to draw the piece. Because
Do you feel anxiety halfway through a piece when you're putting it's looking great and you're adding more to it, or
oh,
are you relaxed about it?
it depends what part of the drawing I'm doing. So I've definitely felt anxious for sure doing certain parts, like, for example, like the huia.
Mhm.
It was the feet. I was so nervous
Yeah.
about the feet because I was drawing the feet in a certain position that I didn't have a photo of. And, I can't go out and photograph them. So to draw them
Yes.
as realistically as possible, yeah, I just want to do justice to the bird, really. And yeah, show its beauty and make it as realistic as I can.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I'm wondering, I don't know why I wonder about this, but sometimes I think whether a person's art style reflects their personality, and your art style is very detailed, very precise, and I wonder if you're detailed and precise in other areas of life.
Yes, you caught me. Definitely. Oh, for sure. Yeah, the other jobs that I've had have reflected that quite a lot as well.
Mhm.
And working in fashion, the thing that I loved is how perfect you can make things,
Mhm.
sewing perfect seams. And um, so I worked in bridal, so I loved like hand stitching lace,
Details.
sewing
Mhm.
beads. And I worked in the film industry. I worked on The Hobbit, and I made Hobbit
Wow.
gloves.
Did you?
And I would be hand stitching Hobbit gloves, and I'd be counting the number of stitches from a photo, because with movies, there's um, or especially with The Hobbit, there's lots of different people that play the same character and all different
Okay.
heights um, for the different scenes. And each set of gloves would have to be scaled with the same amount of
Oh,
stitches and the same angle and all sorts of stuff like that. And like, I
wow.
loved it. I loved
Yeah, that
sitting there
suited you.
for, I think, 55 hours a week hand sewing gloves, like I loved it. Yeah.
I saw one of your reels and it made me crack up. I loved it. It was you, and the voiceover was saying, "Nobody's gonna know. Don't worry, no one's gonna know." And you were drawing with 2 pens at the same time and then 4 pens at the same time. It made me laugh so much. Do you actually do that sometimes,
No.
do double? No. I was wondering if it was just for the humor.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, it was really fun creating that. And of course, I did it in an area on the artwork that was really, really dark. I'd never do that
Yeah,
on
so
an
it
area.
didn't matter. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's just because with that tiny pen, I am just in the dark areas, just creating, like I'm going over and over and over and over. And I just thought it was so funny, like pretending that I could draw with 4 pens. If only, if only I could do that.
It cracked me up because when you were doing 2, I thought, "Oh, that's an interesting technique," and then you were doing 1 on each hand, and I thought, and then there was 4, and I thought, "Nah."
Yeah.
I loved it. It made me laugh so
Oh,
much.
that's good.
I'm wondering, do you have a favorite bird, or is that too hard?
I feel like that is, yeah, I feel like that's a really, really difficult question.
Mm.
Um, I love, like, we've got so many really lovely, friendly birds, and a lot of
Mm.
people are drawn to those birds.
Yeah, like the robin?
Oh, the robin, yeah. So they often, when you go on a bushwalk, you'll see robins. So they're attracted to your movement through the bush, and when you sort of kick up leaves and things like that, little insects will be disturbed, and that's why they are
But
attracted.
it feels like they're
I
following
know.
you. Don't it's like, "Oh, yeah,
I
spend
know.
time together."
Yeah. And I love fantails as well. My friend
Yeah.
Judy, who I mentioned earlier, she jokes, "Oh, you're the fantail whisperer." But yeah, yeah, so I do love those, lovely friendly birds. And
Mm-mm.
I think as well, other birds that I really love would be like the white heron. They're very majestic,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had some really special encounters with them, sort of driving down the highway and seeing one randomly on the beach on its own fishing.
Oh, wow.
And, everyone, hold on, we got to turn back, and then sort of wandering down and watching the white heron sort of fishing and taking photos. I've also been to their nesting ground or
Oh,
their
wow.
nesting lagoon in Okarito as well. So that was really amazing. But I think it's so hard to pick. Obviously, the more book, like
Mm-mm.
it's the ones that you have those encounters with that
Yes.
stand out to me. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm also wondering whether spending all those hours drawing a particular species makes you fall in love with it, makes you develop a relationship with that particular species.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely for sure. Um, and I think too, yeah, as I said, sometimes you can't get the perfect shot in one trip. So I'll be spending, going to a place multiple times, you know, observing the birds and photographing them. And yeah, definitely spending that
Mm-mm.
time with them makes you, appreciate them and
Mm.
want to care for them.
One of my favorite New Zealand species is the tui. I think it's so
Oh,
special. It's such a lovely, fancy, feathery neck adornment.
yes, yeah. Yeah, we're very spoilt for choice here in New Zealand. There's so many interesting and incredible birds. Yeah, the tui, everyone loves the tui. They
Hmm.
have an incredible song. They
Yeah.
they actually it's amazing. There's a video on YouTube. They can imitate different noises,
Okay.
or learn to imitate different noises like car alarms or people's voices
Mm.
or ringtones. Or yeah, I'm sure it's one of my partner's work friends, and the tui has learnt the sound of her alarm on her phone
Oh,
to wake her up,
that's
which
incredible.
is pretty cool. So very clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I ask people about to describe what nature looks like when they step outside. And I think you live in Southland, is that right?
Yes, yeah. So we moved down here 2 years ago, and even though we've lived here for 2 years, it still feels like we're very new to the area.
Okay.
And yeah, so we had an opportunity to come down here for Nick, my partner's work, and we were definitely really drawn to this area because I hadn't been down here before. So we moved down here, and I'd never been.
Wow.
um, but there's so many beautiful, beautiful places all within
Mm.
a couple of hours from where we live. So we're in a very small rural town, and we're surrounded by a lot of farmland.
Hmm.
Um, but we have two beautiful bushwalks within like 10 minutes. So we've got like little patches of bush that's still left. And
Hmm.
so there's lots of native birds there. But within the wider region of where we live, there's Stewart Island, which is where you've been, and the
Hmm.
Catlins, which is a whole coastline of beautiful places to visit, waterfalls, bushwalks. And I think when overseas visitors probably search New Zealand, there's like Milford Sound and Fiordland
Yes.
and amazing places, all within a couple of hours. So even though we've been here 2 years, there's so many places that I haven't been yet. So it's
Yes.
exciting to be here.
That's amazing. And it's so I wanted to talk to you about something you did when you were creating, I think you were creating your art studio, and you hid a little time capsule in the walls of the studio. And I'd love to hear this story
Oh,
because I thought it was so beautiful.
yeah. Yeah, so my partner and I, when we moved here, we were very lucky to be able to purchase our first home, and we've got a sleep out in the backyard that my partner's renovating, and when the walls came off because he's rejibbing and insulating, I was like, wouldn't it be amazing to put a little treasure in there so that if anyone in the future, redid or renovated that little sleep out, that they'd find the history of me, using that studio for my art. So I put quite a lot. So I got a biscuit tin, and I put lots of different goodies in there, from like some local newspapers, some coins, some stamps, and then I put a lot of photographs, and on the back of each photograph I wrote the story of where I was, or what the photo meant to me. I put some artworks, just lots of little treasures. Oh, and like a big letter as well, sort of
A letter, yeah, the letter. And you literally wrote to the people of the future, which I just thought was so special.
Yeah. So I hope that someone finds it in the
Yes.
future. And
can you imagine finding something like
yeah,
that when you took the walls off? It would have been
I know.
amazing.
Yeah, so I hope someone finds it and enjoys all the goodies that I put in there. And I hope I'm still alive and they can
Oh, yes,
contact
can
me.
contact you.
How amazing
Yes.
would that be? Yeah.
That's a beautiful story. I love that. So, I'd love to talk about your recent experiences. You had the chance to go to some sub-Antarctic islands and have a bit of an adventure there, and I'd love for you to describe that journey.
Yeah, so that was amazing. So I was very fortunate to be invited as a guest artist on a trip with Heritage Expeditions. So it was an incredible trip to the sub-Antarctic islands, which, if you zoom into a map very, very closely, you'll be able to find these islands like most people wouldn't even know they existed. So it was a 13-day trip out in the Southern Ocean, traveling 5 different islands. And
Wow.
honestly, when they asked me, I was very, very scared.
Scared to go there? Scared of the pressure of what you
Oh,
had to produce? Or
scared of the journey. Yeah,
okay.
I would say I've overcome my fear now, but I did have a fear of being on being on a ship.
Stuck on the ice somewhere.
Yeah, and I think it was the fear of knowing that when I left, there was no way back. Like no one's, I
Okay.
can't, say, oh,
Can't
I'm
change your
too
mind once.
scared. But the Southern Ocean is very well known for its treacherous waters, and
Yeah.
sort of
Did you have some rough seas? Did you
we
feel
did.
seasick or were you okay?
So we had, I think it was maybe about 24 hours of 7-meter swells. So,
Whoa.
so that was towards the end.
Yeah.
And by then, yeah, I think I'd become accustomed to being
Yeah.
out in the ocean, but sleeping in that type of condition
Yeah.
feels very, very strange, because you're sleeping and you can feel all of your organs sort of being pushed from, in your abdomen
Whoa.
up. You can feel your organs sloshing around in your body.
That would have taken some getting used to.
Yeah, but
And so what was your artistic role? What did you have to do? Or was your job just to be there and soak it all in?
so I went and took lots of photographs, and I'm producing a couple of artworks based on my trip there. Yeah. But
Amazing.
the islands were really incredible, and each one very unique. And so, like, for example, the first one we went to was the Bounty Islands, and they're like big, almost like big rocks in the sea with no plants, just covered in albatross and seals. And then some of the other islands were, covered in what's called megaherbs, which are these really big, beautiful, plants that I didn't even know existed. Like, I described them as So there was one in particular called the Campbell Island carrot, and it doesn't look like a carrot at all. It looks like a broccoli, but a pink broccoli, like
Wow.
a big pink broccoli on these long stems. But I encourage everyone to look up megaherbs because they're just really interesting plants, and lots of different bird life and interesting creatures at each island. We saw lots of seals, sea lions, elephant seals, penguins, lots of different species of penguins, parrots. Yeah, it was really, really special. Very, very lucky to get to go.
That's a
Yeah.
beautiful opportunity.
Mm.
Wow. And then to take that home and to be able to even relive it by creating the artwork must
Yeah,
be really special.
yeah. So my younger brother came with me, which was also amazing and eased eased my
Yes.
fear of being out there. But yeah, as I said, like it was scary, but there was no way I was not going to go.
Yes.
It was just one of
Yes.
those things where, you just got to overcome your fear. And yeah, he took this beautiful photo of an Antipodes Island albatross, and that's what I've been drawing at the moment. Yeah, beautiful albatross out in flight that he photographed from the side of the ship.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You mentioned before that you have a lot of plans and hopes for the future. And I wonder if you want to talk about some of those, or do you want to keep them as a surprise?
I'd like to talk about a couple of them.
Yeah.
So one thing this year that's really exciting is I have decided not to take on any more new commissions. So
Mhm.
the past 4.5 years, I think maybe like 80% of what I've drawn has been a commission.
Mhm.
And I did love drawing those commissions for people, but over the years I've photographed so many different things, and I've got a bit of a backlog of artwork that I've really wanted to draw. So
Yes.
this year's going to be really like a special opportunity to draw all of those pieces that that I've been dreaming up and hoping to
Yeah.
do. And I'd like to continue and sort of grow the amount of support I can do for conservation as well. That's grown a lot last year, and yeah, I've got some big goals and dreams. Like if I can have my own bird sanctuary down in Southland,
Yes.
that would be incredible.
Amazing. It
Yeah,
sounds like you've had lots of opportunities to see how they're set up and see how they run and see what best practice is. That sounds like such a great dream.
yeah. And I think the cool thing about fundraising and working with different conservation groups isn't, you're helping the birds, but you're also meeting these incredible people and making friends and
Mm.
learning. And yeah, I've met a lot of really lovely people who've taught me a lot.
And these places also help connect the public with the species. So
Exactly.
when you experience something, you begin to love it, and when you love it, you can make steps to conserve it. And I think that these places help that they open up the hearts of people who visit.
Exactly. Yes, yeah, spot on. Yeah,
And I love that your artwork is doing the same, because you said that the people who see your artwork often say they see themselves in those animals. And when we can make that connection, when we can make that leap, yes, we are alike, and that helps people make a heart connection with the animals as well. So your art, not only it's doing its job twofold, because you're doing these fundraising efforts and you're working with conservation organizations, but also you're making that heart connection just by allowing people to see themselves in those birds.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for being here. It's been amazing to chat with you about conservation and New Zealand birds. I have my own experiences in New Zealand, and I feel connected through the heart to New Zealand and New Zealand wildlife. And so it's been really fun and exciting to chat with you about your art. Thank you for being
Oh,
here,
thank
Hannah.
you. Thank you. It was amazing to chat with you. I loved it.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Hannah. I took so many things away from this chat. I loved hearing about the people in Hannah's life who fostered and encouraged her. Her mother, who encouraged that deep love of birds and nature, and her partner, who helped her make that big leap to become a full-time artist. It just takes someone to be there and believe in a dream that we have, and that can help change a dream into reality. I also really loved hearing about Hannah's experiences with various conservation organisations and how committed she is to protecting the diversity of New Zealand's precious bird species. I especially loved the message behind Hannah's piece, A Lost Harmony, and the story of the huia. She's absolutely right that this incredible bird can be a symbol and a reminder to us that yes, it's deeply sad to have lost the species that are already gone, but that there are species that are right on the edge of that extinction precipice now, and that it's our chance and also our responsibility to do whatever we can to avoid losing them. Follow the links in the show notes to watch the moving video about the creation of the piece A Lost Harmony. You'll find that video on the front page of Hannah's website. In the show notes, you'll also see links to her social media pages, as well as links to the conservation groups that were mentioned during the conversation. If you're interested in buying one of Hannah's pieces, you can do this from her website too. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week.